We're doing the Solubility and Polarity Lab. We do not need to measure things exactly. This is a qualitative lab, so 1 pinky's width will suffice for 1 milliliter. And we're going to begin with water. So I've got myself a test tube of water, and then I'm going to add just a few tiny crystals of iodine. When I add the crystals of iodine, they just sink to the bottom and nothing happens. We're now going to try ethanol. Ethanol, also a clear liquid. And I'm going to add a couple crystals of iodine. And when I do this, you can see that the liquid immediately turns brown. Ethylene glycol is a green liquid, also known as antifreeze. And a few crystals of iodine. And the ethylene glycol just sinks to the bottom, no color change. Kerosene. And when I add it to the kerosene, it turns a purple color. So obviously, if it's turning a color, they are mixing. So water, no color change. Ethanol, color change. Ethylene glycol, nothing. Kerosene. Now we've got dichloromethane. And the dichloromethane and the iodine mix. And last but not least, glycerol. Glycerol is a very thick, viscous substance. Viscous means it resists the ability to pour. So it's more going to just kind of dribble down the side. Then I'm going to add my iodine. This one you're going to probably have to mix a little because it doesn't. So I'm going to get my stirring rod and nothing happens. I am going to rinse off my stirring rod. All right, and then, so we can add in our data. So nothing turned brown. This one, nothing. Kerosene turned purple. Dichloromethane turned purple. Nothing for the glycerol. In other words, these two, in other words, this one mixed, I'm sorry, this one didn't mix, this one did, this one did, I'm sorry, this one didn't, this one did, this one did, this one did not. So the first one didn't mix, the second one did. The glycol did nothing. The kerosene did mix. The dichloromethane did mix, and the glycerol mixed. So based on your understanding of iodine, you should then be able to identify those as polar or nonpolar, okay? Now what happens after you add mineral oil to the water and the iodine? So you end up with 2 layers. Now we're going to mix it. And what we get is the mineral oil layer turned purple. So in other words, the iodine mixed with the mineral oil. Mineral oil turned purple. We had 2 layers of water in the mineral oil mix. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add water to each of these and then see what happens. So the first one is water and ethanol. Do we end up with 2 layers? No. So that means the water and the ethanol mixed. How about water and ethylene glycol? Did we get 2 layers? Nope, so they mixed. Or kerosene and water. I'm going to kind of hold it just right here, but you can see 2 layers. You got the clear layer on the bottom and then the kerosene on the top, so they did not mix. Dichloromethane. Two layers. This time the dichloromethane is on the bottom. And the last one, glycerol and water. All right, and they did indeed mix. So based on our understanding of iodine, which we talked about at the very beginning, before in class, we talked about in class, you'd have to go watch the video on iodine. So based on that, you need to predict whether they are polar or nonpolar. Okay? So you need to go watch the video about iodine to find out if iodine is polar or nonpolar, and things that are similar mix together. So 2 polar substances will mix, 2 nonpolar substances will mix, but polar and nonpolar will not mix. That's the reason why the water and the mineral oil did not mix. So now the question is, which one's polar and which one's nonpolar? Is the water polar and the mineral oil nonpolar? Or the other way around? Is the mineral oil polar and the water nonpolar? Then the next thing you need to do is predict what would happen if you mixed these 2 together. So if you took ethanol and ethylene glycol and you mixed them together, what would happen? So you can think about this as if water and ethanol mixed and water and ethylene glycol mixed, then these 2 should mix with one another. So go ahead and complete that table And then I'm going to just pick two to see if they actually mix, okay? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to complete that table, and then in 2 minutes, I'm just going to pick two random ones, and we're going to see if your predictions are right. So let's mix ethylene glycol and dichloromethane together and see what happens. Based on our predictions, we should get 2 layers. So there's the dichloromethane. Here's the ethylene glycol. And sure enough, our prediction is right. They did not mix. So let's pick, so you would write those in right there. We tried ethylene glycol and we tried dichloromethane. And our prediction was that they should have mixed. Let's do one more. Let's do ethanol and dichloromethane. We would expect those two to mix. So here's ethanol. And here's the dichloromethane. And yes, indeed, those two do mix. Okay? So then all you have to do is answer the remaining 3 questions on the bottom, and then submit it.